Welcome to Evo India's 2025 compact SUV shootout. We've done a video like this before, but that was back in 2023, and this segment has changed significantly since 2023. Since then, Skoda has brought in the Kylaq. Mahindra significantly updated the 300 and gave us the 3XO, and Kia brought in their second offering in the segment with the Kia Syros. Plus, we've got our usual suspects here, the Brezza, the Venue, and the Tata Nexon. In this video, we're going to be telling you everything you need to know about these cars. We're going to be talking about styling, interiors, features, backseat space, and also the stuff that's really important to Evo India, the engines, ride and handling, safety. And stick around till the end because we do have a proper verdict on who's the winner. Let's get to it. Let's start by talking about the cars that deliver on the thrill of driving. The Kylaq, it's European, it's a Skoda. Those guys don't mess around when it comes to driving dynamics. Then there's this, the Mahindra 3XO. When it was the 300, it was actually the enthusiast choice in the segment. But what slowed it down was it wasn't packaged in a really desirable manner. And that has changed with this 3XO update. And of course, there's the Hyundai Venue N Line. The N Line is the only one with a sportier variant based off of a regular variant. All these three cars are very exciting, but let's get behind the wheel and get to the nitty-gritties. Okay, we're starting in the Skoda Kylaq. So the Kylaq is the newest of these three. It came out, it launched late last year. The prices were out late last year, but sales started this year. What do you need to know about the Kylaq? Couple of things. One, engine is the 1 litre 3-cylinder TSI engine, the same spec as you get in the Kylaq. And that engine comes mated to a proper 6-speed torque converter gearbox. Now, we've always sung praises of this engine, and for good reason. It's a really sweet motor. What do we like about it? The performance. It's really quick, it's enthusiastic. It's an engine that likes to rev, it's an engine that likes to put its power down, and you can feel that performance that it has packing. It's a 1 litre engine, it's a small engine, but it punches above its weight when it comes to the performance that it delivers. In terms of real world performance, in the city, okay, there's a little bit of lag you have to contend with at the bottom of the rev range, but you get it out of that lag and you're good. Out on the highway, it's a really fun motor, you can really ring it out, you can get the best out of it on the highway. Would a 1 litre engine be too small for a car like this? It's not, it's plenty. You can get up to cruising speeds very easily, and it's actually fun to ring out. The gearbox is also a highlight, proper torque converter automatic, no AMT, no CVT, none of that stuff. This is a proper gearbox, and again, it adds to the character of the car, it adds to the smoothness of the shifts, it adds to the effortlessness that it operates with. It's very smooth around town, very smooth on the highway, plus you've got paddle shifters, which is always nice. So when you really want to take control on a winding hill road, maybe for a quick overtake, you've got the paddle shifters at hand. Just click once on the left and go. Another highlight with the Kylaq is the ride and handling. Now, for that, we need to understand the platform that it comes based on. It's based on the MQB A0 Iron platform. That's the same platform as the Kylaq, and that really holds it in good stead. Now, obviously there are changes. It's shorter, so the wheelbase is shorter. What Skoda have actually done is increase the torsional rigidity of this car compared to the Kylaq. So it's actually a lot stiffer in terms of its torsional rigidity and bending stiffness, but at the same time they've softened up the suspension. So ride quality is actually much better than the Kylaq. So you can actually feel the low speed ride is a little better, it soaks up bumps a little better. It really hasn't come at a cost to high speed stability. High speed stability is still very impressive. You still got real rock solid manners at high speeds. It's a car that doesn't find its limits of understeer very quickly. You can actually start to push it a lot before it starts to understeer. And when it starts to understeer, it's very communicative with you. So you know exactly when that point is and when to let off the throttle a little bit and correct the line, So you can actually drive this car very enthusiastically, very quickly, and it will reward you when you want to do that. It's a really close fight between the 3XO and the Kylaq in terms of handling, but I really think the clarity that the Kylaq delivers in terms of feedback to you as the driver is really nice. The steering, it's a little dead, but it feels very direct, and you've really got nice sensations coming through the chassis communicating what's going on, and that really helps when you want to drive fast. Now, let's talk also about the styling package. Styling is good. It really looks like part of the Skoda family, which is really important. So you can actually draw a link between Kylaq, Kylaq and Kodiaq, and that just helps associate this better with the more expensive SUVs. This car is the only car in this test with a platform from a segment above. Think about that. This has a platform from the Kylaq. Every other car in this test has a platform from a segment below. They're usually hatchback platforms which have been really bolstered up and jacked up to become an SUV. But I wouldn't fault it in any other way in terms of design. Anyway, design's subjective, right? You can like what I don't like, I can like what you don't like, it doesn't matter. So let's talk interiors. Just like so much else on the car, it's inspired by the Kylaq. Not just inspired, there's a lot of parts taken from that part bin. So your steering wheel, same as the Kylaq. Cluster, same as the Kylaq. Screen, same as the Kylaq. Not a bad thing. Really good thing. Another thing is the AC controls. Straight out of the Kylaq, but I've always disliked these AC controls. They're a little fiddly, they're hard to use on the go. They're these touch panels, and adjusting the temperature and fan speed on the go is a pain. The Kylaq gets all of the hygiene stuff in terms of equipment. You know, you've got your big screens, you've got a nice steering wheel, you've got wireless phone charger, you've got ventilated seats. You even have a sunroof, not a panoramic sunroof. The competition has been pushing the boundaries, and the Kylaq does not keep up over there, despite being one of the newer cars here. And what the Kylaq does get that the competition doesn't have is a front driver plus passenger electrical adjust seat. So both the front seats are electrically adjustable, and not just forward and back, but also for height, you know, so you get proper electrical adjustability for both front seats, which is a nice feature to have. Space in the back, it's not best in class, it's just about adequate. There are cars in this segment that have more space, but it's worth noting that the seats in this car are really nice. If you're in the driver's seat, you've got really good lateral support, both on the base as well as in the backrest. I wish it had a little more lumbar support. That's a bit flat, but that's all right. One thing that I wish it got, which it doesn't get, is ADAS. You know, this is a new car. The competition does have ADAS. The 3XO does have ADAS. The Kylaq, it could have come in strong. You know, I know ADAS is on the horizon for the Skoda Volkswagen Group. The next Kylaq, which is just around the corner, is going to get that ADAS. I think they should have brought it in with the Kylaq just to showcase their technological might. But it's worth noting that this is one of the safest cars in India on sale today in terms of its crash safety. 5-star BNCAP rating, can't ignore that, and it's definitely one of the reasons why buyers are flocking to it. So that's the Skoda Kylaq. Now let's jump into its direct competition, the Mahindra 3XO. This car has had a massive makeover. You remember the 300, right? It had a similar mechanical package, but it was not so cool on the inside or on the outside. This has been a massive transformation for the 3XO, and it's all the better for it. And that's because the mechanical package was always sound. You know, you've got this 1.2 turbo GDI engine in the 3XO, and it makes the highest in terms of power and torque in this class. So that's really impressive. And you can feel that, you know, you step on the gas and the 3XO moves like nothing else in this class. It's got the fastest 0 to 100 time for good reason, and it's also the quickest in gear. You know, you can actually feel that performance on the go. This engine, it's a 3-cylinder, but it's a very nice engine. You can feel a few vibrations from it, particularly at the steering wheel, but I think that's an okay trade-off for the sort of performance they're delivering to you. You know, Mahindra has been going all out in terms of performance of late. The engineering has been really solid, and that shines through on the 3XO as well. Okay, now in terms of the transmission, you get a 6-speed automatic, and it's a pretty smooth unit, but shifts aren't as quick as on the Kylaq. So I think it loses out some bit of its 0 to 100 performance to the Kylaq in terms of its gear shifts. That does make a difference on the way to 100, but you don't really feel it in isolation. You know, you're just driving the 3XO. What you find is that you have a really punchy engine and a really smooth transmission, and you're all the better for it. You know, it's just a very enjoyable car. You also get drive modes over here. So this button on the dash, you can change between zip, zap and zoom. And honestly, it's quite a useful button because the zip just smoothens everything out. You know, it just makes it very easy, very calm. But then you bump it up into a zap and it just wakes up. You know, suddenly you have a lot more in terms of boost being fed into the engine, and it just feels a lot more sporty. And then zoom mode is max attack. It's quite quick and quite enjoyable, But yes, drive mode's very useful. Another thing that the drive modes do actually is change the steering weight. So when you're in zoom mode, which is the sporty drive mode, your steering weight actually increases a fair bit. It's quite heavy. In terms of outright ride quality, I think low speed ride, the Kylaq and the 3XO are very evenly matched. But I think where the 3XO has a slight advantage is that the suspension isn't as noisy as the Kylaq. The Kylaq, when you go through a bump, you can hear the suspension. And even though it soaks up the bumps pretty well, the noise that comes from the suspension does sort of give you the sense that the suspension is not working as well as it should, when it's actually working fine. This is better damped in terms of how it works, and you don't hear as much of it. And I think that's a very nice thing. But when it comes to high speed ride, I think the Kylaq has a slight edge, you know, it just feels a little more stable, a little more planted. There are these expansion joints on the road where we're driving, and the 3XO just gets a little more of a kick. The Kylaq just, you know, slams through them, you don't feel anything. You get a little bit of a vertical kick in the 3XO. You've got a really enthu chassis underneath here. You can actually drive it very well in terms of just taking it by the scruff of the neck and chucking it into corners. And just like the Kylaq, you know, it rewards you. It puts a smile on your face. When you're out in the hills, driving a 3XO, leaning on that torque, leaning on that handling, it's enjoyable, you know. Sure, these cars are practical city cars, but at the end of the day, you're an enthusiast. You want to have fun in them at the same time. Maybe you don't have the money to buy two cars, one for the weekend, one for every day. And that's where these cars come in and sort of cater to the enthusiast while meeting their needs of the family or whatever they need to do. Now, styling, that's a big question with the 3XO. I'm not a fan, I'll be honest with you. I don't like how the face looks. The rear, I can digest. The face, not so much, you know. Again, styling is subjective, and the good thing about being inside the car is you don't have to look at it. So I'd rather be in the driver's seat of the 3XO than see it in my rear view mirrors. The interiors, that's worth talking about. Now, of course, this has been given a huge makeover on the inside. You get new screens, very nice screens. The instrument cluster is actually reminiscent of the XUV 700, as is the infotainment screen with its interfaces and all. It's a slightly smaller unit. This is a 10.25 inch unit, I think. You've got your drive mode buttons, you've got hard controls for your AC, which is all very good. You've got reasonable storage as well, similar to the Kylaq, the Venue. You know, you've got two cup holders, you've got storage under the armrest, you've got your door pockets, reasonably large door pockets. They can actually hold two bottles. One thing that is missing on the 3XO, which the Kylaq does get, is rake and reach adjust for the steering wheel. So this you can only adjust for rake, not for reach, and I think that just takes away from the ultimate seating position you can find in a car. You can find it much easier in the Kylaq. Also, you're missing equipment like electric seats, ventilated seats in this. You also get a big sunroof. This is a panoramic sunroof. Let me open it all the way and show you. So it opens all the way back over there, and that again is a feature that many Indian customers would appreciate. The dual-tone interiors are nice, you know, black and beige. The beige does lend an air of lightness to the cabin, lend a sense of space. And speaking about space, you actually have a whole lot of space in the back seat. The back seat, you've got good knee room in the back. You can actually seat adults there in comfort. And it's not just legroom I'm talking about. You've also got width. This is a wide car, and you can actually seat 3 adults in there. Maybe a little bit of squeeze in terms of shoulder room, but they'll be more comfortable here than in most of the other cars in this test, Syros excluded. You've got 5-star BN cap available on the 3XO, plus you get as suite of ADAS features, so safety is really not a compromise here. It's also worth noting that this ADAS is level 2, whereas the ADAS in the Venue, which we're going to drive next, is level 1. Okay, Venue N Line, what's it like? First, let's talk about the N Line package and what it brings above the standard Venue. Of course, you get your styling elements. On the outside, you get the red accents, you get the N Line badges, you get the cool wheels, you get the sporty looking exhaust tips, you know, all of that stuff, very nice. You get changes on the inside as well. You've got the N steering wheel, you've got large paddle shifters, you've got red accents all over the cars, N Line written on the seats. So The interior also has been given a little bit of sporty treatment. All black with red, looks very cool. But the mechanical package has also been tweaked a little bit. Power remains the same, torque remains the same. There's no real changes to the engine transmission. Where the changes to the N Line are to the ride and to the handling. Now, they've basically just tightened up. The springs are stiffer, it's all a little tighter, and that's been done to improve handling. How does it drive? Well, that's actually quite nice to drive, you know. The engine is a very nice, smooth, refined engine. It's pretty quick as well. It doesn't have the same soulful noise that the 3-cylinder Kylaq does. This 3-cylinder just feels a little more flat, both in terms of its sound and in terms of its delivery, but it's still quick enough. The gearbox actually eases the clutch in very gently. I think it's trying to protect the gearbox, protect the DCT, so you don't really get a very aggressive launch when you launch the Venue N Line hard, and that sort of shows when you get the 0 to 100 time. But when you're in gear and you step on it, you know, it's pretty quick. You can feel the acceleration, you can feel it get a move on. That lack of noise, lack of soul, what I was telling you about, also has an advantage. It means that the Venue N Line is quite refined. You know, the engine is smooth, you don't hear so much of it, and also by DCT standards, the DCT is very smooth. You know, it's, of course, it's no torque converter, but in the city, DCTs sometimes tend to judder, they tend to hesitate, you know, up and down gears, but that's not the case with the Hyundai DCT. They've actually programmed it really nicely, and within bumper-to-bumper traffic, where these small compact SUVs spend a lot of their time, you'll never feel it catch itself out in any way. Plus, paddle shifters. And these are actually very nice paddle shifters. They finish really well, they're long, they've got a really nice tactile feel to them. This steering wheel is out of the Hyundai i20N, so it does feel pretty special. Ride and handling. Now, these are obviously where the changes are. The Venue N Line has been stiffened up, and you know what? If I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, it is a little too stiff. I know stiff means good handling, but these are family cars. These are compact SUVs. They're not outright sports cars. Neither are they hot hatches, you know. These cars are meant to be all-round machines, and to that end, I think the Venue N Line just takes it a little too far. The good thing is the Venue already exists, which is a little softer than this, but even by class standards, the Venue is already stiff. The N Line takes that a level up, you know. So the ride quality, especially low speed ride, especially when you hit expansion joints, especially when there are like breaks in the road and you hit them at speed, you feel it a little bit in the car, and that can get a little bit tiring after some time. But in the same breath, I must say that high-speed stability is good. The steering feels a little bit vague. I just wish it had a little more feel. They've added weight to it for the N Line. That's another change that has been done over the standard Venue. But I still feel like the other two do a little bit of a better job in terms of just how the steering feels and how it's calibrated. But when it comes to handling, the Venue N Line is very composed. You know, you can really carry good speed into corner. The brakes are sharp, the steering feels reasonably direct, and quick direction changes also feel comfortable. That stiff suspension really works here. So the Venue N Line does handle, and if you're an out-and-out enthusiast and you have good roads around you, which very few of us do honestly in India, the Venue N Line is certainly worth a look. Now, styling, I think it's one of the better looking cars here. You know, all of those little sporty boy racer elements are very well done on this N Line series. They're not tacky, they're not overdone, they just look very cool. And the N badge has provenance now. You know, N has been taking part in global motorsport. I mean, they are in the WRC. So N has provenance, and it's great to see the badge here in India. I think it's time for a full-blown N car as well, Hyundai. Just think about that. But styling, very cool. On the inside, again, all black and red, looks very nice. Can't complain there. The tactile points are good, so you still got hard controls for most of the functions over here. Your radio, your stereo, your AC, all of that is great. But that said, the screens aren't as impressive as some of the other cars in the segment. So your instrument cluster looks a little dated now. You know, Hyundai's already moved on to the next generation of screens in certain cars. The Venue still gets this one. I don't think information comes at you too easily. It does the job, you know. And the screen, the infotainment screen is a 8-inch unit. It's small now by class standards. It packs enough functionality. It just doesn't have wireless CarPlay and Android Auto, and that also needs an update now. But it's still not updated across a lot of the Hyundai Kia cars, so that's an issue. But you get your wireless phone chargers, you don't get cooled seats, but you do get electrical adjust seats, though the height adjust is still manual, and that's only for the driver's seat. You get reasonable storage areas, cup holders, storage space in the armrest, all that kind of stuff. So practicality is not really a problem. The problem is, I think that the Venue is now a little long in the tooth. You know, back when it came out in 2019, if you remember. That's 6 years ago now. Back then, it set the benchmark in terms of equipment in the segment. You know, it blew us all away with the stuff that it offered. It really raised the bar within the sub 4 meter SUV in terms of what one could expect in terms of equipment. And that's why it did so well, you know, in the beginning. It really did good numbers. But this platform is now aging. You can tell the screens are small, some equipment is missing. You know, panoramic sunroofs, ventilated seats, that kind of stuff is not something that the Venue has at the moment. But what it does have is ADAS. So Hyundai has, well, loaded it with some stuff, and the ADAS is part of that package. So that's good. Now we come to the Nexon and the Brezza, where that lot is completely focused on sportiness. This lot is a more generalist vibe. They try to appeal to a wide variety of people. Okay, Tata Nexon. Now, 2023 is when this Nexon was updated, and in that video, which we did just after the launch of this car, we proclaimed the Nexon the winner. And it was the most complete package at the time. But since then, I think the competition has really caught up, and that leaves the Nexon somewhere in the middle. Now, fundamentally, the Nexon has always been a nice car, and that continues, you know. So the strengths of the Nexon have always been its ride and handling. It rides really well. It feels like a very grown-up car over broken patches of road. The sort of confidence it gives you, the way you can take them at speed. Very few cars give you that kind of confidence in this small car segment. And those really are the strengths. Handling as well. It's enthusiastic, it's safe, it's predictable. It's not as enthused and as communicative as, say, something like the 3XO or the Kylaq, but it's still fun. You can still push it around corners and you can still have fun with it. The chassis of the Nexon has always been its strength, and that continues, you know. Despite this being a legacy platform for Tata Motors, I mean, the Nexon platform can be effectively traced back to the Indica. That's how old the platform is. But the fundamentals are strong, and that makes a huge difference to the driving experience. Now the engine. 1.2 litre turbo petrol, mated to a DCT transmission. The engine, it's all right. You know, I'm not going to mince words here. It's not the most refined. It's got this gruff tone. It doesn't sound nice at all. I don't like how it sounds. The other cars here sound much better. The performance is adequate. You know, it's actually reasonably quick. The turbo petrol does do a good job, and this DCT, despite being a DCT, it allows you to launch it hard, which is not something that the Venue allows you to do. The tone is very flat. The power delivery, it is strong through the mid-range, but then it's not very enthusiastic. You know, this engine is certainly not Tata Motors' high point, and that sort of compromises the Nexon's experience a little bit, especially when the competition has moved forward. You've got the Kylaq with the TSI, you've got the 3XO with the TGDI, you've got really nice engines in the Venue, the Sonnet, the Syros, all of them have really nice engines, and I think that is a chink in Tata Motors' armor right now. And the second issue with the Nexon is interior. Okay, they've done a good job of lifting it up into 2023 4.5, wherever you're driving this new one. You've got a big screen for your instrument cluster, you've got a large screen for your infotainment screen, but I still feel, again, there are small niggles. This is something we've complained about from the first drives of this car, you know, that the digits on the screen are just a little too small. The infotainment screen, this is not the largest infotainment screen you can get on a Nexon. The Nexon EV actually gets a larger infotainment screen. So Nexon customers are getting a little shortchanged with the 10.25 unit screen on this Nexon. You've got the backlit steering wheel, and it looks nice in the evenings, but I'm not a big fan of it in daylight. The fit finish of the steering wheel also doesn't feel great. In fact, fit finish around the cabin leaves a little bit to be desired. Another challenge with the Nexon are the ergonomics, and this has been a challenge ever since the Nexon came out. You don't have cup holders in this car, and that's something that's even been carried over into the Curve. Your storage spaces are very minimal. You've got a very shallow port over here which you can put some stuff in, but then they're hard to fish out over here. You've got a wireless phone charger, but again, it's in a slightly inconvenient place, and it doesn't fit a flagship phone with a case on it. You've got a small cubby hole in the storage armrest, but again, it's not too much storage. But that said, space in the back is acceptable. You've got reasonable amount of space in the back seat. Again, not class best, but enough to keep passengers comfortable. This new update to the Nexon also got panoramic sunroof. You get cooled seats, and that again does help in terms of just making the Nexon feel a little more rounded and a little more comfortable. Ventilated seats I think are a must in India. Anything above 10 lakhs needs to have ventilated seats at this point, honestly, because otherwise you're just going to end up with sweaty backs, and that's not fun. What you do get here is 5-star crash safety. Again, the Nexon is one of the safest cars in the country. Tata Motors has been engineering safe cars for a long time now. Overall, the Nexon still is a nice car. It's a nice car to drive. It can do long distances very well. That ride and handling balance is quite good. And it has a reasonably large equipment list, and the interiors have been updated in the right places to make it feel special. But again, there are issues. The finishing is just not there in terms of fit and finish. The engine leaves a little bit to be desired, and the ergonomics are just not there on this car. It needs a heavy rework to be practical as some of the other cars in this test. So Nexon, still a strong contender, but I don't think it's going to win today. Okay, now on to the Brezza. The Brezza is pretty unique in this lot. Firstly, it has a naturally aspirated engine. It's the only one here with a naturally aspirated engine. And interestingly, this is the 1.5 litre naturally aspirated engine, which means this car doesn't actually qualify for the sub-4 meter tax break anymore, but it's still pretty well priced, which is really commendable from Maruti. Now let's talk about this engine. Firstly, 4-cylinder, and you can immediately tell with the smoothness that it brings. Also naturally aspirated. So the character of the engine is very different from all of the other engines here. It's very linear, very refined, very creamy smooth. It sounds really nice. So the Brezza's engine is actually one of the highlights of its driving experience. It's a smooth, clean, efficient, fun to drive Japanese engine, and those really are the best kinds of engine. Another thing that this engine has is the mild hybrid system. So effectively you've got a slightly larger battery, and that can store a little bit of energy. It can feed some power to the car under acceleration, but mostly what it helps with is fuel economy. It's got a robust stop-start system, and it also helps while coasting and just off power. Now, transmissions, it's the only manual also in this bunch, but what you can get it with is a 6-speed automatic. In terms of both, the fuel efficiency is really good. So that is a strength of Maruti Suzuki, and that continues with the Brezza. The automatic we've driven in the past, very nice, very smooth. It's a 6-speed torque converter, which replaced that 4-speed, which was in other cars earlier, mated to this engine, and still is in the Jimny actually. But the manual's also fun. Maruti makes some of the best manuals in the business. They're smooth, they're slick, you've got a really nice throw, and they're just enjoyable to shift through and roll through the gear. So even if you're getting the manual, you're going to have a fun time in the Brezza. Now, ride and handling on the Brezza, I think it does the job reasonably well. Ride quality, it's comfortable. It's not going to set any new benchmarks in terms of ride, but it does the job and it keeps you comfortable on the inside. There's very little to complain about in terms of ride comfort on the Brezza. Even at high speeds, doing 100 kilometers an hour right now, very flat, very stable. The way the suspension controls the movement of the body after you hit a bump is very controlled, and you've got good ride quality over here. Handling, not the most enthusiastic, but it's not bad either. It's safe, it's predictable, you can have a good time with it. If you're in the mood to drive a little bit quickly, it'll indulge you a little bit before it runs into understeer, but it's not going to light the fires in your heart like any of the other cars here. The steering, I feel, is a bit dead, it's a bit vague, but that's all right. I mean, not every car in this segment is designed to be a fun to drive car, and This one, the chassis balance is exactly what that is. It's balanced, you know, it's comfortable and it handles reasonably well, but it's not gonna set any new benchmarks. Coming to the styling of the Brezza is a handsome looking car, you know, it's not polarizing in any way. It's a very simple design. It's evolved over the years. Obviously, it's been out for 10 years now. It's got those typical SUV proportions with a high bonnet and strong lines. The new face of the Brezza is also quite nice. And it's a nice looking car. The interiors, that's interesting. So the last update brought a whole bunch of changes. You got this large infotainment screen, which you see across a lot of Maruti Suzuki cars. And that's a nice unit, very sensitive to touch. You've got wireless CarPlay, Android Auto, which is helpful. You've got your sunroof, you've got your wireless phone charger. But then I feel like the Brezza has also been left behind a little bit compared to the rest of the segment. You don't get a digital cluster, you get analog clusters. Now, that doesn't bother me. I actually prefer the analog cluster. Analog clusters are super easy to read. The information comes at you very clearly. You don't have to dive through menus to get to the information you want. Tacho, speedo, MID in the middle, super simple, super clean, you know, and I really like that. But there are people who want a screen, and the Brezza doesn't offer one. You don't get ADAS, you don't get cool seats, you don't get a panoramic sunroof. And I feel like the competition has really raised the game in terms of equipment, and the Brezza has been left behind. But the thing about the Brezza is it still appeals to a mass of people simply by virtue of being a Maruti, you know, it's going to be reliable, it's going to be safe. The Brezza is also not based on the Hardtech platform, it's on the older Global C platform, and that's a little more sturdy, a little more robust, it crashes a little bit better. The Brezza, I think its appeal lies in its simplicity. It's not overly complicated, it's not trying to do too much. It's a simple car, simple engine, nothing fancy. You just get in and you drive, and it will deliver what it needs to. It also, one of the other reasons why it sells is because of Maruti's network. You know, it's got a very wide network. You'll find spares all across the country. They're easy to fix. So all of those do add up in terms of what the benefits of the Brezza are. And just the simplicity of the package and the fact that very little will go wrong with it is definitely part of the appeal. In terms of space, the Brezza is just about adequate. You know, space storage areas are reasonably good in the front. You've got cup holders, you've got storage for your phone, wireless phone charger tray, big door pockets. You know, there's really not much else you can ask for in this. Space in the back seat, reasonably good. Again, it's not setting class benchmarks, but it's par for the course, and you can be comfortable with 4, and 5 will be a squeeze. But 5 will be a squeeze in most of these cars. Now let's get to the Syros. The Syros is not really a direct competitor to any of the other cars here. It sits somewhere between the compact SUV and the mid SUV, but what's important is that it is within the important 4-meter rule, and that's why it's here with these cars today. Now what Kia's trying to do with this is something very different. Rather than go the traditional SUV route, which all of those cars follow, they've tried to do things differently in terms of the packaging on the inside, and of course that necessitated changes to the styling, and they've tried to create a car which is very different in character to everything else over here. Let's get behind the wheel and check it out. The Syros is interesting, you know, the styling has been so divisive. Everybody online doesn't seem to like it, but I've actually got an opposing opinion here. I don't mind it, you know, I know it's not beautiful. That's fine. It's odd, and I like odd. I don't mind odd. The proportions actually remind me of what K cars are in Japan, you know, and K cars are incredibly cool cars to my eye. They really stretch the boundaries of what is possible within the limitations of what they have. That's insane, you know. I mean, Formula One is doing the same thing. They've got a set of regulations and they're stretching it to the max. I know I'm going to get shot for comparing the Syros to a Formula One car, but think about it. Kia's trying to stretch and really push the boundaries of what is possible within the sub 4-meter segment with the Syros, and I think that deserves some respect. You know, what they've done here, they've taken a small car platform, they've pushed the wheels out to the ends, so the wheelbase is long, the overhangs are very short, and what that does is allow them to maximize the space inside the cabin. What that leaves you with is frumpy proportions. You know, you've got this really box-like styling, you've got no overhangs, you've got no chin jutting out at the bottom, so it looks a little odd. The face, okay, I know that's also something people don't like, and that is down to Kia's new global design language. You see it on the EV3, you see it on a bunch of EVs, the EV9 also. and this is an adaptation of that for the Syros. But again, styling is personal. And just like I said with the 3XO, you don't have to see it when you're inside it, do you? But what that packaging allows for is a really nice interior. And this interior is by far the best in this lot, as it should be, because it's also the most expensive car here. You know, this is significantly more expensive than the other cars over here. So what you get on the inside are a massive digital panel. So you've got actually an amalgamation of 3 separate screens joined into one panel. Really high quality, very good touch sensitivity, visually stunning. You know, even the interfaces and all very nicely done. We've got this nice steering wheel. The steering wheel, again, it's a little different from the other Kias that have come before it, and it looks very cool. Hard buttons, really appreciate that. So you've got hard buttons for volume, you've got hard buttons for your media, you've got hard buttons for your AC as well. And all of that just makes this very easy to drive and live with. You've got a lot of storage. So you've got 2 cup holders over here, you've got a tray for your wireless phone charger, you've got reasonable sized door pockets that they're just about okay. But what I really like is the quality of materials. I know everything is hard touch in here, except for maybe this panel on the door, that's soft touch, but the dash is pretty much hard touch. But the plastics that they've used, the textures that they've laid on, all of that feels quite premium and high quality. This gloss gray is such a nice replacement to gloss black. You know, instead of gloss black, they've done gray. You don't see mud on it and dust on it as easily. It doesn't pick up smudges as easily. You've got hard plastics on the dashboard. Even this, you know, the plastics around the cup holders, around the wireless phone charger, that is made of recycled plastic, and it all feels very high quality. You know, it just feels very well put together and very well stitched together. But the highlight of the Syros really is the back seat, because what you can do there is effectively just slide the back seat all the way into the boot and just free up insane amounts of legroom. The amount of legroom you can free up here is more than what you can on a luxury SUV, you know, so that's the kind of legroom we're talking. And it is insane what Kia has managed to do in terms of space and packaging in this car. There's 2 engines, there's a turbo petrol and there's the diesel. Today we're driving the diesel, which also makes it the only diesel in this test today. But it's a nice diesel engine, 1.5 litre turbo diesel, very smooth, very torquey, very efficient also. What you also get is a little bit of the drone of the diesel in the cabin. So when you step on the gas, the diesel engine, the drone and the NVH that it generates is very audible in the cabin. The vibrations are well contained, the noise and the sound is still very audible. But what I like about it is it's torquey. You know, it's a nice torquey engine. You don't have to squeeze the daylights out of it to get performance out of it like you have to on the Brezza. Brezza's power is all concentrated to the mid to top end. This one is just got that turbo. You can, once it spools up, you know, you've got the boost to sort of deliver the wave of torque that you need to get moving. In terms of the chassis, that's interesting. This is based on the K1 platform, which is actually the same platform as the Grand i10. So it's not the Sonnet platform, this is a different platform. Its dynamics are okay, you know, they're acceptable. Comfort is good, you know, as long as you're on reasonably good roads, it's good. On slightly worse roads, you do feel like the ride quality is a little lumpy and you can feel the bumps a little bit more than you'd want to. But on most roads, it's pretty good. The handling leaves nothing to be desired. You know, it's not an enthusiastic car. It's not like the steering is dialed in. You've got a long wheelbase. You've got a tall car. Dynamics aren't its strong suit. You know, there's a lot of body roll, and that's all right. You know, I think some cars, it's okay if they're not designed for the thrill of driving. Sure, you'd want cars to be nice to drive, but this car has a different agenda. Its agenda is comfort. And from that lens, I think it delivers what it's set out to do. So I'm going to excite you, and I don't think anybody who's a keen driver is going to buy a Syros because it just doesn't deliver as much on that front as, say, something like a Sonnet would. You know, the Sonnet's a very nice car to drive. So a keen driver would probably get the Sonnet. But if you're looking for comfort, you're looking for function, you'll probably get this. Worth noting that the Syros has been tested by BNCAP, it gets 5 stars, also gets level 2 ADAS. But there are some stuff that I think it should have got, keyless entry being one of them. I think that's a miss. But yeah, it's very well equipped. I mean, panoramic sunroof. You've also got ventilated seats in the second row. Okay, it's just the seat base, but you have something first in segment. You've got sun blinds in the second row, again first in segment, and that just shows the focus of the car. You know, it's all about the back seat. It's all about keeping the person in the back comfortable, and to that end, I think it delivers. Now let's get to the verdict, and I'm going to start with the Kia Syros, because the Syros doesn't really sit exactly in the same class as the rest of the competition here. In terms of pricing, it sits a little bit above, but in terms of the value proposition also, it's very different. This car is all about space, comfort, and premium materials on the inside, and it delivers that really nicely. If you're somebody who's looking for space, the Syros is the way to go. Then we come to the Maruti Suzuki Brezza. The Brezza is the safe choice. If you want something that's stress-free, something that will work on every single day of the week, then the Brezza is the way to go. The 1.5 engine, it's creamy smooth, it's very nice to drive, but it doesn't have the performance of the other cars here. And I think the Brezza is lacking a little bit in terms of features as well. The competition has really raised the bar on that front. Then we get to the Tata Nexon. Now the Tata Nexon has been the benchmark for very long, and it still has many strengths. That ride and handling balance is phenomenal. It feels the most SUV-like, the most robust, the one that you can go hammering through trails with without a stress in the world. But the engine package, it is a bit of a letdown. The ergonomics, those are a letdown. And when the competition is so stiff, it becomes difficult to recommend the Nexon in that context. We come to the Venue N Line. This is a car that's really nice to drive. For the driving enthusiast, it's phenomenally good. It's got stiff suspension, it's got boy racer looks, it's got really neat touches on the inside, it's got a nice engine and gearbox combination. It's really hard to fault. The only thing is, it's a little bit old now. The features are lacking again. And there's a new Venue, a new generation Venue that's just around the corner. And I think that will be a force to be reckoned with. Which brings us to the last two cars in this test, the Kylaq and the Mahindra XUV. Choosing between those two were incredibly hard. They're neck in neck. And I think of these cars, these two are really the pick of the lot. But I promised you a verdict, so I'm going to give it to you. Let's break it down. In terms of the ride and handling balance, I think the Kylaq takes the cake. At low speed, high speed, it just feels a little more communicative, a little more settled. The XUV, it definitely has the performance advantage, both on paper and in the real world. The 0 to 100 times do not lie. But that performance comes at a cost. In terms of fuel efficiency, the Kylaq is actually a little better off. In terms of value for money, I think the XUV is better off. If you look at the variant under this one, the AX7, not the L, you get a panoramic sunroof, you get Harman Kardon sound, you get more space on the inside, you get better material selection, and that's exactly the same price as the Skoda Kylaq. The only thing that the Kylaq has instead of that is powered and ventilated seats. It's not enough. The price to features proposition, the XUV is really good. In terms of safety, both of them get 5-star B NCAP ratings, but the XUV also gets the option of ADAS if you pay a little bit of extra money. And then the space in the back seat, the XUV is definitely better. So when it comes down to brass tacks, all cards on the table, I think the XUV is the winner of this test. But I'm being real, you can't go wrong with either of them.